welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be my mid-month wrap-up for the month of September. So far this month I have read 11 books, which is really good. I'm really happy with the number of books I've read. I've been really on a reading roll at the moment and I feel like I've got a really good routine with my reading. I do read every day. I have my commute to work is almost, like, collectively is almost 2 hours, so I have quite a lot of time to get some uninterrupted reading in. It's not quite 2 hours, but it's close enough that I do get quite a lot read during my commute, and then I do read in the evening when I'm back from work. So that's why I can get so much done in terms of reading. But I'm just going to run through the 11 books that I have read so far this month. So first book I read of the month was Blood of Hercules, which is book 1 in the Villains of Law series by Jasmine Mass. This one I gave 3 stars to, and I will not be continuing on with this series. It didn't grip me enough to want to continue on with the next books. So this one we follow a character called Alexis, who ends up entering into the Spartan War Academy. They do these blood tests on young teenagers when they get to a certain age, and something in her blood shows that she qualifies to enter into the Spartan War Academy, and there they go through kind of like these brutal trials to kind of train them to be a Spartan warrior. And she has these mentors that are supposed to kind of help guide her, and these teachers at this academy, and there's a little bit of a romance building with one of the professors, and there is also this I don't know if he was a god but there is another guy, so it is a why choose romance. There are 2 heroes. I would say in this one it is definitely more of a setting up book. The romance is definitely not the main part of this book. I assume in later books it's going to become more prevalent, and this one, as I say, really spent a lot of time developing the world, and we see a lot of the trials, which I wasn't necessarily fully invested in. It did take me a while to get into this book, and that's why I ended up giving it 3 stars. I didn't necessarily fully invest in the story. It was definitely an interesting premise, but for me it didn't quite have the payoff to want me to continue on with the book, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Guild by Raven Kennedy, and this is book 1 in the Plated Prisoner series, and I gave this one 4 stars, and I will be continuing on with this series. So this one is really interesting, and we have our female main character, who I'm just trying to check if I wrote down what her name was. No, I can't remember what her name is. But basically we have a female main character who is like the king's favourite, King Midas, who obviously keeps her as almost like a pet. She has her own kind of cage built for her that is, although it's a cage, it is it's not like a small cage. She does have the freedom to kind of move around in it, but it is a cage nonetheless, and she, as I say, is kept by a prisoner by this king, and she believes that she is in love with the king, even though he obviously doesn't necessarily treat her the greatest, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was quite a enjoyable read. It was really fast paced. I listened to it on audiobook and I had a good time reading it, and I definitely do want to continue on with the series. I think the books get bigger and bigger as the series goes on, but I did have a good time reading this. I've read from Raven Kennedy before. I can't remember what it was called, the Cupidity series, which I liked the first couple of books of, and then it tailed off, so I hope that doesn't happen with this series, but I do plan to continue on with it. Then I read Nightshade by Autumn Woods, which is book 1 in the Sorrow Song University series, and I enjoyed this one and gave it 4 stars. This one is a kind of dark academia romance set at this university. We follow our main character called Ophelia, who attends this university. It's quite a prestigious university, and at the beginning of the book we are aware that her parents died in a helicopter crash, and Ophelia doesn't believe that this crash was accidental, and she believes the answers to what happened to her parents lie at this university. So she ends up going there. She ends up getting in on a kind of scholarship, and she is definitely not the necessarily target person for this university. It's very much a place for the rich and wealthy to go, and sons and daughters of like mafia people and business people and very wealthy people, and all is not what it seems at the university. Things happen, and while she's there she meets Alex, who's kind of almost like her enemy, because Alex's father is, she believes, responsible for her parents' death. So she is very much not wanting to get involved with Alex, but they have chemistry and they can't help but getting involved. And I had a really good time reading this. I think the romance in here was really well done. I definitely want to see more of that in the next book. I haven't seen any announcement about when the second book is coming. I really hope we don't have to wait too long, because I am very keen to pick up book 2 whenever that comes out. Then I listened to The Proposal Play by Lauren Blakely, which is book 3 in the Love and Hockey series, and I really enjoyed this one and gave this one a 4.5 stars. This one is a hockey romance, and it is a friends to lovers, almost fake dating and married in Vegas story. So we have our 2 main characters who end up going on a trip to Vegas. I think the team is playing in Vegas, and they end up getting married in Vegas, and they decide that because their wedding photos got leaked, that they will keep up the charade of being married, because it'll cause a bit of a scandal if they have to announce like immediately that it wasn't real. And I had a really good time reading this. I've read a couple of Lauren Blakely's books, but this is definitely one of my favourite. It's book 3 in the series. I haven't read the other books in the series, but I think you can definitely get away with that, because it is a series of standalones. Obviously there are characters mentioned that obviously previously had their own books, but I don't think that in any way hampered my enjoyment of this one. I definitely would recommend it, and I do plan on going back and reading the rest of the books in this series at some point. Then I read Swept Away by Beth O'Leary, and I gave this one 2.5 stars. I didn't really enjoy this book, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. The premise for this one sounds really interesting. It's about these 2 characters who end up having a one-night stand together on this boat. Both of them end up there on this boat, and there's kind of a bit of miscommunication about why they're there. The hero, I can't remember his name, Zeke. Zeke and Lexi. Zeke has bought the boat off of Lexi's best friend, but Lexi's friend didn't tell Lexi that the boat had been sold. So Lexi's friend had a child really young, and she told Lexi that the father wanted nothing to do with the child. So Lexi and her have kind of co-parented this kid, and they live together. But Lexi's friend has got a new boyfriend, and she suggests to Lexi that she may want to move her boyfriend in. So they have a bit of an argument about that, and Lexi runs away to kind of get away from the argument to this boat that her friend owns, but also she thinks, but Zeke is there, and he tells her that he has bought the boat from her friend. So they end up spending the night together on this boat, and as I say, it gets swept away to sea, and they are out at sea for quite a long time. I think about 10 days or something like that. It's quite a long time that they are out at sea, and we spend a lot of the book with them out at sea, and it's obviously quite heavy on the survival aspects. There are moments where they are unsure if they're going to make it or unsure if they're going to be found, and those elements I liked, but then we got to the bit where they were rescued, and then there's kind of this third act conflict that comes up, which I'd almost kind of predicted, but it almost felt unnecessary. It was very over the top, very dramatic, and I already wasn't necessarily loving this book, and then that really kind of hampered my enjoyment. So that's why I only gave it 2.5 stars. Beth O'Leary, I feel like her books are very hit or miss for me. I've never given any of her books 5 stars. A few of them have been 4 stars, but I've had a couple from her that have been like 2.5, 2 stars. So I don't know whether to pick up any more of her books in the future, but we'll see. I guess it depends what her next book is. Then I read Writing Mr. Wrong by Keely Armstrong, which I gave 3 stars to. This was another sports romance. It's a hockey romance, and we have our female main character Gemma, who is a romance author, and she has written a historical romance with this Scottish laird in, and it appears that she has based her Scottish laird in her book off of this hockey player called Mason, who she previously went to school with, and they had kind of a moment when they were in school, and they end up in a fake dating situation, and obviously it goes from there. This one was okay, but definitely nothing really special. I feel like I prefer Keely Armstrong's more paranormal books. She's written a couple of contemporary romances, this one and her previous one, which was, I can't remember what that was called, something about Mr. Right. I'll put the name on screen because I can't remember what it was called. But they have just been okay for me. Her paranormal stuff have been a lot more enjoyable in my opinion. Then I read The Lady of the Lake by Jean Menzies, and I really enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. This one is a sapphic retelling of some Arthurian legends. So we follow Lady Vivian in Camelot, so we get to see Arthur, Merlin and Morgan, and there's a little bit of a romance between Lady Vivian and Morgan, and they obviously receive magic lessons from Merlin. And this one I really enjoyed. It's definitely made me want to kind of read some more Arthurian legend books. So if you have any recommendations for kind of particularly romances that feature that, I'd love to check those out. This one, as I say, it was a really good book. I had a good time reading it. The story was definitely very interesting. I've not really read too many Arthurian legend books, so it didn't feel like repetitive from anything else I'd read before. One thing that I would criticize this book for is it is a adult book and it is marketed as being a adult book, but in places it did read more like a young adult book, and the language used is modern language, which I was not initially expecting. I was maybe expecting a bit more kind of language more typical of the time, so that kind of was a little bit jarring at first, so that's why I gave it 4 stars over 5, but I did definitely have a good time reading it and I would definitely recommend it. Then I listened to Unravel Me by Becca Mack, which is book 3 in the Playing for Keeps series. I've not read any of the other books in the series, but I definitely will be going back and checking those out at some point. This one is I think this was also hockey, but it's a sports romance, and I had such a good time reading this one. So we have Rosie, who is a single mum, and Adam Lockwood, who is a hockey player, and they meet when Rosie volunteers. She's training to be a vet, and she volunteers at the dog animal rescue place, and she is walking one of the dogs that they have available to rescue, and they meet when Adam is walking his dog, and his dog is, I don't know what type of breed it is, I don't know if it's necessarily specifies, but it's like a really big dog called Bear, and he's shouting out in the woods for his dog, who, as I say, is called Bear, and she obviously panics thinking that it's a actual bear rather than a dog, and then the dog jumps out of the trees at her, and so that is how they meet. And Adam is smitten right from the start with Rosie. He definitely falls first, and he really gets involved with the kid as well. I can't remember what the child's name is, but Rosie's kid, he kind of almost like instantly falls for the kid as well. And I really like that in a single parent romance where the obviously not the parent, but the other person, be that the hero or heroine, depending if it's a single mum or single dad romance, where they get really involved with the kid. I love seeing that, and I absolutely had a great time reading this. The conflict in this book is the fact that Adam doesn't tell Rosie that he is a big sports star. She doesn't know who he is when they meet, and he doesn't tell her, and she kind of finds out about it, and that was the conflict. And I already knew that was going to be the conflict the minute he didn't tell her about his identity, but it didn't really hamper from my enjoyment, and I had a really good time reading it. I would definitely recommend it. It is on the longer side. The audiobook was 18 hours, which is quite long for a contemporary romance, but I didn't notice the length too much whilst I was listening to the audiobook. I'm not sure whether physically reading it I may have noticed it, but as I say, would definitely recommend the audiobook, and I do plan to go back and reread the rest of the books in the series. Then I read Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid, which I gave 3 stars to. This one was just okay. So this is as the title suggests, it's a Macbeth retelling told from the perspective of Lady Macbeth, and I thought this was okay. Like, I feel like if you've read Macbeth, this doesn't necessarily add anything to that story, even though we are getting a different perspective than obviously we do in the play. I feel like this perspective didn't really add anything to the story. It didn't really follow it in any kind of different direction, so it was just overall okay, which is why I gave it 3 stars. But if you like Shakespearean retellings, it may be one to check out, but definitely not my favourite book from Ava Reid. Then I read You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Calin Bayron, and I really didn't enjoy this one, and I gave it 2 stars. So this is a young adult horror book. It's very short, less than 300 pages, and it just didn't work for me. So the premise of this one is we have our female main character, whose name I cannot remember. Charity is her name. And she works at this summer camp, but it's not your regular summer camp. It is this camp where people pay to go to, and they basically pay for this kind of like scary experience. It's a bit like the kind of haunted tours that people go on at Halloween, but they basically pay, and there's this like horror simulation where there's this kind of masked serial killer that goes around killing everyone off by one by one, and obviously the staff members are all like involved with it, and it's obviously meant to scare people. So the start of the book, I didn't really read the premise of this going into it. I knew it was set at a summer camp, but I didn't really know much more, and I knew it was like a thriller horror. But I didn't know much more than that. So it opens with them enacting out like a scene where they're obviously being chased through this camp, and as I say, initially I didn't realise that it was obviously fake, and it then, so they follow that through, and then things start happening at the camp, and it almost becomes kind of real, and it went in a strange direction, and there was this almost kind of cult that was involved, and yeah, I just didn't really gel with this story, to be honest. It went in a direction that I wasn't really expecting, as I say, with this cult that kind of came out of nowhere, and it, I don't know, there was just something about it that I didn't really get on with. It was a short book, but it felt really long when I was reading it. I was like, when's this going to be over? So I wouldn't recommend that one. And I'm not sure, I'm hesitant to pick up some of the author's other stuff, even though I had some of her books I've seen other people talk about and I was interested in checking out, but I'm not so sure. So let me know if you have read any of her other books and if they are worth picking up. And then the last book that I read in the first half of the month was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and I gave this one 3 stars. This one wasn't necessarily quite what I was expecting. It's a kind of cozy fantasy romance, and I would say the romance is more of a secondary plot line, which I wasn't quite expecting. I feel like I was expecting more romance, particularly because of the US covers. The US covers make them look more like romance heavy than they are. The UK cover ones are the covers for them are a bit blur in comparison. I don't necessarily love the UK covers, but that's kind of like a separate discussion. But this one follows our female main character, who was called Mika, and she is a witch. And in this world, the witches, they meet on I think it's the 3rd Thursday of the 3rd month, and they meet up, as I say, every 3 months, and gather together, but outside of, in their normal lives, they don't interact, and that's kind of the way that they are led to practice that they aren't supposed to interact with each other, and obviously they're supposed to keep their magic secret. But Mika kind of likes to bend the rules, and she has a TikTok account where she posts witchy videos. She doesn't like expose magic or anything on TikTok, but she kind of claims to be a witch, and obviously people don't necessarily believe that she is a witch, but she obviously does, you know, witchy things for her social media. And these group of people see her videos and decide that they can tell that she is the real deal. So they approach her and ask her to become a tutor for 3 young witches who are kind of learning to deal with their magic and control their magic, and they need obviously a witch to kind of tutor them. And she enters into this house to kind of look after these 3 girls and kind of train them in their magic. And there is a guy who kind of is almost like a guardian for the children, and he is very grumpy, and he doesn't really, he almost seems not to want Mika there. They do have a romance, but as I say, the romance definitely feels like a secondary plot. And there is some kind of a light mystery element because their original witch guardian seems to have disappeared, and we obviously find out what's happened to her. As I say, this one was just okay for me. I feel like it was not the story that I was expecting, which is maybe why I didn't enjoy it as much, because I was expecting more of a romance than what I got. But I am still interested enough to check out her most recent release. I've got that on hold from the library, and that should hopefully be coming in soon, so I'll be reading that in the coming weeks. But those are all of the books that I have read in the first half of the month. Let me know what your favourite has been. I think my favourite has probably been the Becca Mack romance that I read. I've read quite a few sports romances this month, and I've been having a good time with those, so that's definitely my favourite so far. I hope that I have a great second half of the month, and I will see you guys in my next video.